today I'll be talking about how to great products with customer support. I think you can see my screen. Please send a message to the chat if you can't see my screen, so I can you, okay, awesome. So you can see my screen. So we'll start. So before I go into how to build great products with customer support, I want to talk a little about why customer support is important in the first place. I've written a bit about this on how to provide the best experience when it comes to customer support, and the link is in the slides, which will be shared with you. Um, so customer support is important because every touch points that the user has with your product needs to provide the best experience possible. Every single thing has to be top notch, on point at every single time, so that customers are always satisfied. So every single interaction with your product, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on social media, or whether it's in person, anywhere, whether with your salespeople, with customer support, whoever, you have to always provide the best experience. And a reason why customer support is extra important is because research shows that good customer support can make users more loyal to a product or a business, and also more willing to recommend the business to others. Think about all the times where you had a great experience with a product and the people who provided that product probably didn't provide a great experience themselves. You're probably about to never use that product again. Or every time you message an Instagram vendor and they don't reply you on time and you're upset and you're like, I'm never buying from this place ever again. This is what we call the human negativity bias. So this is simply the fact that whenever you have a bad experience with something and a good experience, you tend to remember the bad experience more than the good experiences. So if you're a swimmer and you swim all the time and you enjoy yourself, one time if you almost drown, that's the experience that you tend to remember. It's like, I'm never swimming again, until you can walk past that fear. So if I go to a restaurant and the food is really good, and when you go to a restaurant, the main product is the food that you're going to eat. If the food is really good, but the service is really, really bad, I will probably never go back there, and I will probably not recommend it to people that I know. So people are even more willing to put up with just okay products and other things. It doesn't have to be great. It can be just okay, as long as the experience of using it is great, as long as the service that you get from it is great. And when you talk to customers, when you talk to people who are in charge of that product, you have a good experience. So, onto the question of how do you create a link between customer support and products? For most people, this is how their teams work. Most people have the product team separate from the design, separate from engineering, and then those three are together and connected and work together, and then customer support is just there by itself somewhere else, and nobody really pays attention to it. Right? But this is where you want to be. You want, as you can see, the arrows are two-sided, so it's not like it's not one flow of information or one flow. It's bidirectional. You have feedback coming from customer support to product, and product is also looped into customer support. So it's not a one-way relationship, it's a two-way relationship. Another thing to note is that this is where you really, really want to be, right? So you want to have customer support linked with engineering, analytics, sales, marketing. You want everybody to be connected. You're not going to have just customer support connected to product, because all of these places are places where you get user feedback. Anywhere where you interact with your users and where they give feedback is where you want to be. You want to be listening in on that feedback. You want to have access to that feedback. And this is not all of the possible teams or ways you can get that feedback. This is just an example on what's based on what exists in most organizations. So your team could be arranged in a different way, with maybe marketing and product are together, or product and design are together, which is, I've experienced different variations of this. But the point is that every source of information that goes into building your product should come from everybody that has access to your users. You need to get that information from all the places where it could be. So why is this important? It's important because you're getting unprompted feedback. And unprompted feedback is super important because people are coming of their own will, on their own, to you to say, this is what I think, this is what I experienced, this is what I feel, this is how your product works for me, this is how it doesn't work for me. You're not the one going out to ask those questions. They're coming to you willingly saying, help me, this is what I need, right? And that is very, very valuable when you're building products. You want user feedback when you're building products. And the best kind of feedback is the one that you don't ask for when it comes to product building, is the one that comes to you unsolicited, unprompted, because it shows you that your users are engaged, especially when it comes to feature requests. When people are asking, I want this feature, do you have this feature? That is valuable insights for you to know what people want from your product. I'm going to go into a more detailed explanation of that when I talk about how to use and prioritize product feedback. So another thing you want to think about is, how do you create the loop? So now we know that products and customer support need to be connected, and why. So how do we create that loop? First thing you want to do is something called all hands support. All hands support is essentially that everybody is involved in customer support. You listen in on customer support calls, you handle customer support requests, you talk. This is also one way you can talk directly to the customer, especially for people who don't have the opportunity to carry out full-scale research or the bandwidth. Listening in on customer support calls, sitting with customer support reps, talking to them. This is one way that you can close that loop, close the gap between products and customer support. That way, everybody is. An example of a company that does this really well is Basecamp, and they've written about it. I also linked to an article that talks about that process in the slides. Basecamp has a process in which everybody is somehow involved in customer support. It doesn't remove from the work that you do. It just adds to the work that you do because you're hearing directly from the people who are using your product or service. Another thing for you to do to close the gap is to keep track. To keep track of the things that you're hearing from customer support. What are they saying? Read the tickets, audit customer support regularly. So audit the support tickets to see things that you might be missing out. And this is something that I have done with companies that I have worked with. A particular one I worked with was Lade Tawak, and I wrote a case study about this, which is also linked in the slides, on how I approached that process with wallets. It was basically going through all the customer support messages up to a certain period and identifying different kinds of feedback we were getting. And I'll talk more about how to group the feedback that you're getting from customer support. And finally, you want open and shared documentation. Whatever feedback is coming from customer support, you want them to share. You don't want things to be happening in silos, right? You want to have a free flow of communication between customer support and products. And this can be a monthly meeting, it can be a monthly stand-up, it can be a shared Google Doc, a shared Google Sheet. It can be in any form, as long as it's open and easily accessible to everybody who is involved in both teams, or even outside of those two teams. Because again, the feedback from customer support is valuable to every area of the organization. Another thing you want to note is that when you're soliciting this feedback, you can also, products can also go to customer support and say, whenever you have requests of this nature or questions on this particular feature or topic, can you keep a log of it or highlight it? So you can also help ask customer support to help you focus, like to focus on specific requests for your own purposes. So it's not just always customer support coming to you. You can also like take that first step and go to customer support and say, oh, we're interested in finding out about how people, what questions people have about X feature or product. And then customer support keeps a log of that for you for a week, for 2 weeks, and then you can sift through it and see, okay, maybe people don't have problems with this because we're not getting a lot of questions on it. And so that gives you that kind of insights into how people are using your products beyond analytics and beyond quantitative data, because qualitative data is also very important is a very important form of data that is often overlooked by people who do products, because we want to feel like we're very analytical and quantitative, but qualitative data is very useful because it explains the why and the what and what all the numbers mean. So you can't really understand the numbers outside of the context of what they mean. And this is one way to get that information. How do you use feedback from customer support? So you So first thing you need to do is categorize support feedback. And I talked a bit about how to categorize that already. So you need to figure out what works for your product, what works for the kind of feedback that you're trying to get. So it can be feature, you can group them into feature requests, usability problems, technical problems, whatever categorization works for you. Figure that out with your team and say, this is how we're going to sort the feedback that we're getting. And then you need to define rules of engagement. How are you going to decide what feature to use? So you can do something like, if X feature is requested for Y times in Z months, then we will look into it. So you're talking numbers, like what is the volume of the feedback, how many times people ask for this feature, or how many times people ask for us to change this thing or to add something or to remove something. So you want to take note of those numbers and say, when it reaches, if we get to 1,000 of this request in 6 months, then maybe this is something that we need to look at. And again, this depends on like the number of users you have, your churn rates, your daily active users, whatever metrics you use that are valuable to your product, because none of these things happen in silos. They all feed into each other. So you need to consider that when you're making your decisions on your rules of engagement. Then something else you need to think about is how to prioritize. So you can use a prioritization matrix. And you can also think about like, what are your business goals? How does this feature relate to that? What are the metrics that are important to you? How does this feature relate to that? And then think about something like the effort impact matrix. What is the value of adding this feature or fixing this problem compared to the effort that it will take? Is it high value, low effort? And you want to focus your energy on things that are high value and low effort, or mid effort. And then things that are low value and high effort, you want to leave them alone because the value that you will get from it is too low compared to the amount of effort it will take to fix it. So you need to ignore those things and focus more on the things that have high value for your customers and for the business. So value is not just for the business, it's for both customers and the business. And then you think of things like the Kano method, which is basically a survey that asks two questions. How would you feel if you had this feature? How would you feel if you didn't have this feature? And there are lots of articles on how to implement Kano method, which I can't go into because that's not the focus of this talk. But that's also one way of prioritizing feedback. And then you can do something like community voting. So we often turn away from community voting and all this because it seems like designed by community, which tends to have its own problems. But there are companies that have used it successfully. For example, Lego. Lego has a community where people can upload designs and suggestions on Lego sets that they want Lego to create, and the community upvotes, and Lego now decides whether to build or not. And they actually use this, and they have found it to be successful and useful for them. I linked to the Lego case study on using community voting to make new products. So you can also check that out in the slides. So that's another way to prioritize feedback from customers. You can send a survey, you can do opinion surveys, ranking, ask people to rank in order of preference and things like that. So that gives you a sense of, and that kind of goes back to the concept of volume. How many people are asking for this thing? Then you also want, if you have a SaaS product that has or a product that has tiered users, you want to also think about what are your high value users, who is asking for this? Is it the high value users? Is it the low value users? You want to focus on people that have high value. You want to focus on people that have high customer lifetime value, people that have who stay with you longer. You want to think about all those kinds of things. You want to think about people who are just joining who are just using the product for the first time, and see, you want to compare things like how long does it take for people to churn and what can we do to prevention. So you're thinking about not just one thing, you're thinking about different kinds of metrics that you can use to compare the feedback and feature requests and things that you're getting from your users to create a great experience for them. Another thing that customer support helps you do is that it helps you with further research. So when people come and ask for a feature, you can say, oh, maybe we need to do more research into the needs of people when it comes to this, because lots of people are asking for it. So for example, or it can also tell you that maybe it can also show you if there's something wrong with maybe your information architecture on your website, or there's a feature people are not finding. So if you're seeing from customers or that people are asking for a feature that you already have, then you know that there's a discovery problem, and then you can do research to help you figure out why people are not discovering this. And then you can say, okay, maybe we're going to do card sorts or tree testing to see why people are not finding out where this is, that we have this. Or maybe people are asking for a new feature a lot. So you might want to do foundational research into that to say, why are people asking for this feature? How do they currently take care of this problem? Is this something that we want to add? So it allows you to zoom in and also zoom out to do foundational and tactical research on your product. And then finally, another way to use the feedback that you get from customer support is to test the ideas, right? So the things that you get, you do an MVP, and an MVP is not always adding a new feature. You can test an idea by saying, for example, let's say people are asking you for a new feature, or you want to create a spin-off of your product, and you want to see if people will use it or pay for it. So instead of saying, will you use this? Or if we gave you this, how would you use it? You do something like, okay, we're introducing this new product. Pay a fee of $2 to join the waitlist. And if you see that people are paying to join the waitlist for something that hasn't been launched, then you know that people actually want this. So that's a way to test your idea. And so now I will take questions.
Okay, cool. Guys, if you have questions, please, you can use the chat feature to pose your questions, and then I'll just moderate that. Otherwise, if you have a question for Lade, just let me know so that she can be able to answer them. Lade, could you kindly talk a little, just very briefly about that prioritization matrix? Like,
Let me see.
like what exactly it is?
So there's no one prioritization. So let me a Google search can share an example of one. So basically, what it is that you have all your ideas and features or thoughts in a matrix, and then on one side, and then you create your matrix. On one axis, you have efforts or difficulty. Another axis, you have value or impact or something like that. So what you want to do then is plot all those things. And a thing is that you can't really know, you can't really, your estimate of the effort or the impact is just dependent on what information is available to you. It might not reflect reality. That's something to think about when you're doing product prioritization matrix, is that you might be wrong because you're estimating based on what you know, how much effort it will take to do something and how much impact you will get from it. So you basically plot that on the graph and say, I'm just find an example that I can share with you. Can you see this? Can you see the matrix?
Yeah, it's a little bit pixelated, but something's coming on.
Oh, okay. So this is what it looks like. You have difficulty, effort, cost on one axis, and then importance, impact, value on another axis. And then things that are low effort, low impact are things that are nice to have. And then you have things that are high effort, low impact. That's the sweet spots. Like I said, things that have high value to the users and they're easy to add, remove, or change. And then you have things that are high effort and high impact are things that you need to also work on, but they're much more difficult to achieve. And then you want to totally avoid things that are high effort and high impact. You want to focus on those ones last because they require too much time, and you probably don't even want to focus on them at all because the impact is very low compared to other things that you can spend your time on instead. Okay, so I'm gonna take that. I'm looking through the questions now. This is, what challenges have I faced trying to sync customer service and product support? So the major challenge at first is that product people feel like, at least in my experience, product people tend to feel like customer support is not relevant to them. So the biggest challenge I often face is in educating team on why customer support is important and how it can help, which is also why I like write about it and talk about it like this, so that you can see that there's actually value to get from customer support. And so that's the biggest challenge I face. And the way I solve it is by teaching them really and explaining and giving examples from other companies that have been successful in combining customer support feedback in building their products. I talked about the prioritization matrix framework that I refer to, which is the impact effort matrix. But there are other ones. If you Google, you'll find. And then people also use the Kano surveys, which is basically you send out a survey that has there are two major questions in the Kano survey, which is if you had this product, how would you feel? I'm paraphrasing here, something like that. And then the options are like, I expect it, I have it, I don't care about it, I don't want it, stuff like that. And then there's some analysis that you do, and then it helps to identify what products and what services and features people actually need and want. How have I handled competing organizational priorities influencing product features or UX and customer articulated needs? So organizational priorities are often, this also goes back to like there being a gap on the business side between the business and product and UX. A lot of people often like feel that product, UX, customer support, all these things have no impact on the business and they provide no value. But when you think about how if you have business goals, right, that you want to create a product and there's no need for that product, then you're wasting your time. So it is the role of product, customer support, UX people, design people to say, this is why it is important for us to focus on user needs, because without the users, there is no product. Like if there's no user to use your product, then it's dead. So you need to focus on how to identify the user needs that exist. And then the goal for, I think, I can't remember who said this, but it's like there are 5 major goals that businesses have: increase revenue, reduce costs. I can't remember the other 3 right now, but there are 5 major goals and they all go along that same line. That's increase revenue, increase market share, reduce costs, stuff like that. So you need to find a way to map the user needs to those 5 goals. And if those user needs do not fit into the 5 goals, because at the end of the day, businesses have to be profitable. Businesses have to make money. So if you're not helping them to make money while keeping in mind all the other things like ethics of design and not manipulating users and all of that, and keeping the customer at the center, then if you're not helping them meet the number 1 goal, which is to be profitable, then you're not doing your job right. So the important thing to do is to be able to combine the user needs and the business goals to create something that satisfies both needs. I've said before that as a product designer, your user is not just the end user, or as a product manager, your user is not just the end user, your user is also the business. The business needs your services and your expertise and your skills to help them be profitable and save costs. And then the end user needs your services and skills to create something for them that they find useful. So you have to find that balance. How do you manage customer support feedback when you're dealing with a large database? I think the difference is, when it comes to like a small database versus a large database is the volume, really. And how to manage that, one way to manage that is to do something like the audits that I mentioned. So you can do like a monthly audit. So, and then another way, if you've not started this loop from the beginning and you're just introducing it when you have like tons of customer support feedback, it's 2 things you can do. Is first of all, you can say, how far back are we going to go in auditing customer support feedback? So you might want to go like 1 year, 2 years back, and then leave everything that happened before 2 years before 2 years back alone. So we're in 2020 now. You can say we're in May 2020. So you can say we're going to audit customer support feedback up until from May 2018 up until now, because there's the idea that customer needs will change as they grow, as time goes. So you might want to discard like all those things from way before May 2018 or even May 2019 and just focus on that. And then incorporate these new steps going forward. So when you have identified what are the key categories that we're using, so maybe usability issues, product product requests, product feature requests, etc. When you have created your categories, then you can now start sorting new feedback into those things. How do you map user needs and business goals for a beginner UX designer team of one? So to do that, the first thing you need to do is you need to have a very clear understanding of what the business goal is. And for every product, when a stakeholder comes and says, I want to build this product, you need to understand why they want to build the product. So why are they asking for this? What do they want to achieve by having this product exist? What is the purpose? And then you do your research. That's the next step with the users. When you do research with the users, you're able to identify where business goals and user needs intersect. There's no way to avoid that. If you don't do any research, you can't determine where the two intersect. You're going to just lean towards one side, basically. So you have to do research, interview both. Like I said, the business is a user and the end user is a user. So speak to the business side as a user to understand their own needs and goals and all of that. And then speak to the end user to understand their own needs and goals and so forth. So you have to think about the user as the North Star, as like your guide. And then when you have all those, when you do your research and you see what people need, then you can now rephrase and reframe the business goals around the user needs. Right? So instead of trying to create a problem for your solution, you create a solution for the actual problem that people have. Is it advisable to always seek feedback from customers during the entire product development phase? At what stage would you advise a company to put more effort when collecting feedback? So feedback is important at every stage, at every phase. But then it depends. Is this a new product, like entirely new product that there's almost no parallel to it? Because there's the idea that you always have to do primary research. Primary research is important, which is research that you do by yourself. But you can also do secondary research. You can look at what research has have other people done and made public that you can refer to that can help you in building this product. So a lot of the larger companies publish research papers. There are research agencies that publish research papers. You can buy them. They're the ones that make available for free. So you can look at all of that, and as a starting point to creating your products and getting feedback. And then research doesn't have to be like large scale, where you take 2, 4, 10 weeks and do background research and all of that. You can just talk to people, do guerrilla research where you just go out and find people who are the closest approximate of who your end users are and talk to them. So you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do research. So that's how to do research in the beginning. And then research, you have to do research at every stage, basically, to get the best use of research. So when you've done your foundational research and you're co-creating, you're doing participatory design to come up with what features do you put in this solution, how does it look, how does it feel, how does it flow, and so on. And then you test your ideas. Like I mentioned, with the example of, is this idea profitable? Where you can say, pay X amount to join a waitlist, and if X amount of people pay, then we define this as a successful or a possibly valuable product. Yeah, so at every point you need to be doing research. In your experience, have you been able to hack all hands support where all team members enjoy and take their time doing support seriously? Well, in some cases, it's not like every single team member that will be involved, because again, the team members have their own actual like responsibilities that they have to attend to. So I think that you should read the Basecamp article. It will give you more insights on how to effectively incorporate all hand support into your own process. And so you always have to find what works for you. Something you can't just like replicate somebody else's process and think that it will work for your own situation. You have to think about your own unique factors. So maybe you can't have people sit actually take the support calls, but you can have them like listen in, right? That's one way. You can have them take notes. It's like when we're doing research and we say people should be involved, it doesn't mean that the developer on my team is going to like facilitate the interviews, even though it might get to a point where they can begin to do that by themselves. But as a first step, I can have them sit in and say, take notes or whatever you observed during the session. So you can do your all hands support in that way, where the other people are not necessarily taking support calls, but they might be listening in on support calls. They might be replying emails or reading emails coming to support, or seeing customer support messages on social media. So customer support is not just on whatever platform that you use, whether it's Zendesk or Intercom or whatever. It can be on social media, it can be via email, whatever, all the sources through which people contact your business to ask questions or to get support or to get help. That's what I mean when I say customer support. So it doesn't necessarily have to be picking up customer support calls. It can be reading emails, it can be listening to the calls, it can be stuff like that. What is the best survey style to use when you want to assess NPS? I generally do not recommend NPS. I have a long-standing, very public dislike for NPS, because I think that NPS in and of itself is not a very good marker of most of the things that people use it for. I feel like there are better ways to find out that information from people. So for example, would you recommend these products basically? And you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. First of all, the question, would you recommend this product, is a bad question, because it doesn't tell me anything. If the user says, I would recommend this product, what does it mean for me as a business owner? Who are they recommending the product to? Why are they recommending the product to the person? And so on. So like the question itself might not be very valuable. I think that there are much better ways to advise that you're trying to use NPS for. Small team, is it advisable to let customer services get involved in user interview based on a created questionnaire? If you can't, like, customer support is definitely a very good way to get to recruit users for your research pool or something. So like when a customer's inquiry or has been resolved or responded to, the customer support can ask them something like, I generally recommend against doing such research like on the same conversation or call, because the reason I recommend against that is because somebody who has come to customer support angry about something, even though the issue has been resolved, you want to give them space to like ask, like you want to give them they enjoy the resolution of the complaints or want to give them space to digest whatever feedback that you're giving them. What you can do is ask if they can be contacted later for more research, and then you can introduce your interview or whatever research you want to do with them. For the Basecamp article, yes, my slides will be shared with the group. For a beginner PM, how can you lead UX research? I'm not sure that I fully understand that question. How can you research in what sense?
I think what he means is that if you're a PM who's just starting out, how would you go about conducting user research on users generally?
So if you're doing research for the first time, I would say that a very good way to start is you want to have a research goal, right? So for every why am I doing this research? What do I want to find out from the research? How will the findings from this research be implemented? Right? So you want to think about all those things before you even set out to do your research. And then you think about who are the people who's the target audience for this this feature product or whatever the outcome of this research is it targeted at. And then you create that file based on behavior, not demography, like what do they do, thoughts, stuff like that. And then when you have that, you find your people. As you're finding your people that you want to interview, you're creating your research guide. So is there an interview that you're doing? Why are you going to do an interview? You determine what method you use. Do I want to do interviews? Do I want to do card sorts? Do I want to do diary studies? Do I want to do participatory design? A combination of these things, usability testing, whatever kind of research it is, depending on your goals are, where you are in your process, and so on. And then you do your research and then do your analysis, and that's usually the process. However, there are some articles I enjoy that I share, so I will add them as an additional resource to the deck on MPS. What is the best way to constantly collect unprompted feedback from users? You can have a community, like the Lego community, but when you create it, it's no longer really unprompted, so to say, but because you've created like a structure in which people are coming to give that feedback. So I won't call it unprompted anymore, but it doesn't. Unprompted feedback is you can't really prompt unprompted feedback because it is unprompted. But other ways that you can get feedback is you can encourage your users to give you feedback on, so like on customer support calls, for example, you can say, do you have any additional feedback or questions for us after you have finished with your resolving the issue that the customer called in about? Is one thing to do. Another thing is something continuous research. So I have spoken about this. If you Google continuous research, you see articles about that. So you don't have to like sit down one day and say and plan out a whole research study. You can say, we're going to do on this for the next 2-3 months, we're going to talk with our users on this topic. So you can do one interview a day, or you can just do a general feedback or a general experience. You can do any user every day, ask them about experiences in the about didn't you like. So tell me about format is one of the best ways for getting feedback from people, or getting insights from people. Tell me about the time you did this. Tell me about the last time you did that. Tell me about your experiences in that. And it allows them to tell you a story that you can then pull out more questions and more insights from. What is the general approach you take on feedback received from customers and insights that you can share with developers with regards to the features that need to be added, the product usability issues, and goal of So generally, I involve my developers or whoever in the research process. So they observe, they're involved in planning, etc. So when the feedback comes, it's not like totally new to them. But in the cases where I can't have them directly involved, how I translate my feedback depends on, from the beginning, the research goals and all of that. So if I know that the goal of this research to improve usability tests, and the goal is to make changes to the interface based on user feedback and what we find out from the user research. So how I relate that feedback can be can be it can be bullet points of things to change on the interface. It can be sketches of recommendations of what they need to change, maybe changing the location to changing button, the location of the button, or making something more prominent. It could be, this is how the user flow should now look like. So the feedback, how I relate the insights is always different depending on the goal and who I'm relating it to. If I'm doing a report, if I'm doing research that the business executives are interested in and is like something that they want to know, then I'll do a proper like full deck with quotes and clips and all kinds of extra information. Sometimes my report is an email with bullet points. So it always depends on what stage you're in, who is getting that feedback, what are they using it for. Another thing to note is that you should have a repository of your research. So with the COVID-19 pandemic. So the only thing that has changed is that all my research is now remote. I've done diary studies, I've done one-on-one interviews, I've done usability testing in this past few months of the COVID-19 pandemic. So it's not that different for me because I was already doing remote research even before then, but remote research was not the only thing I was doing. I was also doing in-person research, but right now I only do remote research, and the previous stages of planning, all those things are still the same. It's just now I have to be more aware of how some of the things I want to do will carry out remotely. So like with a usability test, I can either send the link to the prototype to the user beforehand, or it's on my own screen. I share my screen with them and either give them remote control on my screen or ask them to direct me like I was a robot and doing whatever they wanted. So like just figuring out how to make the process work online the same way it would work if we were in person. And there are lots of resources on how to transition to remote research. I have a research guide. There's a short bit.ly/beginner UXR guide that has resources to how to conduct remote research. Should the iteration of a solution be made priority rather than pursuing an investment opportunity? I'm not sure I understand this question. I'm not sure I understand the question. There was a problem with developing products whereby sometimes the pilot testing done appears to be successful, but when it is launched, uptake seems sluggish. How can one conduct predictability or contingency measures to boost success of a new product? So whenever people say that they did research and it didn't work, my initial question is, what kind of research did you do? How did you ask the questions? What kind of questions did you ask? Because if you go and ask people, will you use this product? They're going to say yes. 90% of the time, they will say yes. So that doesn't really tell you anything. That's why I always say that, like, research is not just asking questions. Research is about asking the right questions. It's asking good questions that actually help you understand your users, understand people. Because if you do research and you say, will you use this product? How much would you pay for it? And people tell you, it doesn't mean they're going to do what they have told you. And it doesn't mean that they're lying. It just means that they actually think they will do that. And as we all know, people behave in ways differently than they think they would. So something you can do is, I mentioned an example of a way to do that is like, if you want to launch a new product that costs, you want to see if people will actually buy it, you can say, you can send an email to people and say, oh, we're launching this new product, pay X dollars to join the waitlist. And if people actually pay to join the waitlist to get the product first, then you know that, okay, this is something that people might want. Another thing you can do is something like create a page. So, and let me give an example of an offline situation. So if I own a restaurant and I want to add a new item to the menu, a way I can test if people will actually want that item is I can do a sample and put it in front, or I might not even do a sample, I might just add the item to the menu on my restaurant menu. And then I can say, okay, I'm going to put this item on the menu for the next week. And if out of 200 people that come into the restaurants in one day, every day, 50% of people ask for it, then I will make it. That's a way to predict possible interest in a product. So doing something like that, say for the next 5 days, at the end of the next 5 days, if 50% of all the people who come into the restaurant request for this dummy product that's on the menu, then we will make it a real product on the menu. So there's no one way to answer that question. You just have to figure out for your type of product, for your type of service, for the type of feature that you want to introduce, what's the best way to predict if people will actually use or buy this product. I think I answered the question.
Yeah, there's a question you didn't seem to understand, and I think it was from Sharon. So I'm just going to unmute Sharon for her to try and ask it in a way that probably would be clear.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, so my question probably is, I mean, I'm probably going to digress away from user research. I'm not sure it hit it directly. So, I mean, instead of, just saying that it is, I'm going to use an illustration. So a founder is a CTO of a certain company, and then, as a product lead, we are somehow working on this product, and then like an investment opportunity comes in, for the product of the company to secure some funding, and there's been some functionality issues such that prospective users, particularly the ones who have tried the product that is currently on a beta phase, is they're having issues with signing up, and like things as easy as, or as things that we think is easy as, like the forget password button not working and all of those things. So I just wanted to get some advice on should that be made priority? So should fixing all those things be made priority than pursuing or going after the investment opportunity?
So if people are not signing on to a product, then you have like an acquisition problem. If people are leaving a product because they can't figure out what to do, you have a churn problem. So you need to actually, those are actually large problems that you need to solve. And the way to solve them, there's, again, when people think of research, they think about like specific methods, but there are more ways to do that. So if people are having problems signing up to your products because they can't figure out how to sign up, then something you can do is you can test out different versions of a new sign-up form. You can look for best practices on how to do a sign-up form. You can do desk research. So like, you need to think about what does this problem mean in like quote unquote business terms, right? How is it affecting the metrics that you have, the business that you have? Because I don't want to focus so much on metrics, because there's this thing where people start to chase metrics even though they don't like at the end of the day, there's a negative second order effect. And this is another thing that people need to think about. When you're making decisions, think about the second order effects of those decisions. So for example, if you have a product where before people can actually use the platform, you need to go through a check, you need to verify their identity. People could complain about it like, no, why you're wasting time? You need to let people just go directly. However, if you remove that check, that means that fraudulent people can enter your platform and fraud happens, and then people that they don't feel safe anymore, and you're losing people. Although you have quote unquote listened to the customer and removed the verification process. So again, what people say is not it's something that you have to be careful about how you phrase the questions that you ask people, because everybody wants things that are easy to use and simple, but sometimes things like that create friction is actually a better experience for the user. So saying that before you can, I mean, if you use a service like Uber and there's no verification or checks for the Uber drivers, do you think that the riders will use the app? They won't, because they won't feel safe. But people use Uber and Taxify because they know that there is a verification process that Uber and Bolt does to before they sign up drivers, so you feel safe. So that step is not smooth and it's not easy. It creates friction, but it's a good kind of friction. So basically, if the problem that is there, if the complaint that is there is making customers churn, is making you lose customers, then you definitely need to solve those problems. Oh yeah, somebody has shared the 5 things I was talking about: is increase revenue, decrease costs, increase new business, increase existing business, and increase shareholder value. So another question is, how do you explain to PMs that conducting a research doesn't expose their product's ideas to competitors? They think that people will steal their idea. This is definitely something that now we've seen, that people that have experienced, in which people, as a reason why people don't want to do research. So there are two ways to approach this, I think. I think one way is, first of all, to weigh the potential of wasting resources in creating a feature that doesn't work the right way or that people don't want or need, comparing the cost of that to the cost of somebody else, quote unquote, stealing their idea. Ideas are dime a dozen. Like, there are so many ideas and people have, so ideas don't mean anything, right, without implementation. And when you're doing research, if the thing about good research is that, except you're like sharing a prototype, for example, if you're doing foundational research, if you're asking actual good questions, it might be difficult for somebody who is just listening to identify the goal of your, like, the thing you're trying to build or find out, basically. So that's one thing. It's like, you ask good questions to understand people. You don't ask questions to build your products. Do you get what I mean? Like, you're not asking people questions to build your products. You're asking them questions. You're doing research to understand them so that you can use the insights you have about them to build your products. So doing research doesn't mean that somebody's going to steal your idea or whatever. That's first thing. It's like properly educating them on why research is important and how it is useful. And then another thing is to screen out people. When you're doing research, you want to screen out people who are in your field, who work for a competitor, and all. People do that also as a way to avoid things like that happening. So you screen out people who you think are too close to your products from participating in your research as participants. Ooh. Also, yeah, NDAs and consent forms are a good way to control for that. I'm not sure I understand this new question. So when you're doing research, when you're getting participants, if you're not getting even if you're getting participants from your customer base, because a competitor can have an employee of a competitor can be using your product. It's possible, it happens. So what a screener does, a screener is a document, a questionnaire that allows you to be sure that you're selecting the right kind of people for your research. So let's say I'm doing research for a product that is targeted at people, at parents of children under 5. So first of all, I definitely don't want people who are not looking after children that are under 5 years old. So I can do a screener that a question on my screener can be, do you have children? Yes or no. If your answer is no, then I remove it from my screener. And then I ask you, how old are your children? I will leave that open-ended. Or how old is your oldest child? And how old is your youngest child? That you, whether as a parent or a guardian. So I can leave that open-ended. And then as I said, maybe I'm looking for people that have children under 5 years old. So if people that fill the form and say that their youngest child is 6 years old, I eliminate them from my screener. So I don't need them for my research. So basically that's what the screener does. It allows you identify the right kind of people for your research. So you can ask questions like, where do you work? What is your role where you work, your job title, for example, and then you can use that to also screen out people. Twitter polls for research. I think Twitter polls for research is tricky. I don't think you should make concrete decisions based on Twitter polls. I think that you can use Twitter polls as a kind of exploratory device. So when you're like still thinking about a topic, playing around with it, trying to figure out how to approach it, you can do Twitter polls to explore before you do your foundational research, before you do your in-depth research. So Twitter polls are tricky because anybody can answer a Twitter poll. You don't know who they are. You don't know if they fit into your target audience. You don't know if they're the right kind of person. But Twitter polls can be useful for exploratory research. So I think that's all the questions, I think.
Yeah, seems like it. We are actually just clocked a little over an hour, so we are a little bit over, still within time. But if we don't have any other questions, I can just wrap this up. So thanks so much to Lade for the incredible insights. So really appreciative of sharing those experiences with us. For the rest of the guys who joined the webinar, we'll be sharing the actual talk and the slides. So keep checking your inboxes for that. Lade, do you have any last few remarks?
Well, I think I've said everything that I have to say.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess for the rest of the guys, we'll see you next week for the World Product Day. We'll have an AMA session with someone else. I forgot the name, but see you then.